Hey, gorgeous souls, and welcome to the Midlife Purpose Project. I'm your host, Katie Farinas, a yoga teacher and soul purpose coach. And just like you, I'm navigating the wild, beautiful, and sometimes messy terrain of midlife. This is the space where we unpack the shifts happening in our bodies, minds, and souls. We're diving deep into the questions that rise up when everything seems to be changing. Think of this as your toolkit for making sense of this powerful phase of life. We'll have honest conversations, belly laughs, maybe a few tears, and a whole lot of growth. We'll hear from experts on topics that matter to you in midlife, and I'll share yogic philosophy that has been helping humans live with more skill and ease for centuries. Because here's the truth. Everything you've been through, every challenge, every joy, every heartbreak, has been training you for this. You're not broken, you're not lost. You're stepping into your power. So come on in, embrace the mess, the beauty, and the absolute magic of midlife. Let's journey together. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Midlife Purpose Project. Last Friday, I hosted my Finding Your Peace in Turbulent Times masterclass, and today's episode is a little snippet from that class. You may have heard me say before that one of the first steps to getting in touch with your Dharma, with your soul's purpose, is by getting quiet so that you can hear that internal whisper, your internal compass. But in order to do that, we need to feel connected, calm, grounded. We need to have an internal sense of well-being. And that is what this talk was about. It was about finding that well-being inside of yourself, regardless of what is going on outside of you, because life is going to be lifey all the time. We are always going to be experiencing challenges, whether they be in our personal lives, which I share about some of my biggest challenges in this episode, or whether they be things going on in our world. Challenges are just part of life. And you'll also hear me mention a quote from Zen Buddhism, which is about being able to hold the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows of life. To be human is to experience all of being human, right? The hard stuff, the beautiful stuff, the magical stuff, the sad stuff. It's to be able to hold it all, but always find that sense of peace and connection inside of yourself, regardless of what is going on the outside. And if we want to know our Dharma, if we want to uncover it, if we want to be able to hear our soul's whispers and callings, if we want to be able to do what we were sent here to do in this lifetime, in these bodies, with our unique combination of life experiences, skills, talents, passions, desires, we have to be able to hear the call and hear the whispers. But that's pretty impossible when we are spiraling out of control, when we feel very unsteady, when we get caught in loops of worry and resistance and rumination. So this talk was about how we can come home to ourselves, how we can calm the inner storm regardless of the outer storm, so that we can find peace. And when we find that peace, that is where we can start moving from. We can start moving towards our Dharma, towards our soul's purpose, and the way in which we are meant to serve ourselves and serve the world. So I hope you enjoy this part of the talk. And if you are interested in exploring a little bit more, you can, of course, download my free 3 journal prompts to discovering your Dharma. And also, of course, book a discovery call with me on my website, katiefarinas.com. this is part of the work. This is part of what we will do together, is helping you to find that internal sense of well-being, of peace and connection, so that we can start moving in the direction of purpose. So I hope you enjoy this episode. And of course, email me, DM me on Instagram, get in touch with me in any way if you have any questions, or if you'd like to hear more of the talk, I will send it to you. If this part of the talk really captivates you and you want to hear where we go from here, please just reach out to me and I will send you the rest of the recording. I will link the 3 journal prompts to discovering your Dharma in my show notes. So if you're interested in that, you can head over to my website and download it, or you can just click the link in the show notes. I mentioned I was going to link the episode on connection in the show notes, but I will also link the episode on nervous system regulation there as well. So you can check out both of those episodes. All right, enjoy. I will talk to you at the end. I thought that I would offer this because many people around the world right now are in turbulent times, right? They're struggling with what is going on in the world around them, and often struggling with personal issues as well. And I think it's just a really timely topic because I believe that we we can only make the best decisions for ourselves and our family and the world at large when we are really grounded and centered, and not feeling that sense of overwhelm, fear, frustration. Excuse me. So, we're going to talk about how to come back to what I'm calling well being. And that encompasses well-being, encompasses many things, including internal peace. So we'll get into that in a little bit. A little about my story, and how my own turbulent times led me to the wisdom that I'm about to share. So, about 11 years ago, after the birth of my son, I was very suddenly struck by chronic migraine. And it really took me out of my life. I was unable to work. I was unable to care for my children. It was extremely painful, physically painful, but also scary time. And I had had other challenges throughout my life, prior to that happening. But it was the first one that really took me out. It was what in yoga philosophy we call a disorienting dilemma, meaning that it kind of turned my whole story about myself and my view of the world and my place in it on its axis. Nothing seemed to make sense anymore. I felt extremely scared, alone, really separated from others, like no one else could understand, what was going on with me. I felt fearful for my future and for my children's future. I felt really overwhelmed, doing even the smallest of things. And I felt like I had lost contact, like I was disconnected, not only from myself, but from those people that I love and kind of from the world at large. I had never been a religious person, but I'd always been a spiritual person. And during that time, I always believed in God. And during that time, I really felt like, what are you doing? Like, why is this happening to me? What reason could there possibly be for you to put this into my life and make me suffer in this way and make my children suffer in this way? And so I became disconnected from that sense of a higher being part of a higher being and connected to something larger than myself. I really started to my whole world consisted of worrying about, thinking about, and trying to fix and solve this problem. And the more that I did that, the more that I noticed my world seemed to be shrinking. And the more I was losing the desire to be here anymore. And I had done yoga in the past, kind of in and out, mostly for exercise, really not diving into any of the philosophy or the 8-limb path of yoga. But I'd always been a very physically fit person and had done a lot of different types of physical exercise. But obviously, during that time, that was not possible for me. With migraine comes, pain, exhaustion, dizziness, vomiting. Like it's a systemic reaction. And so for some reason, there was this internal voice that said to me, go to yoga. And I did. And for a lot of that time, I really just laid on the floor and took the time to breathe and to be in a space that felt loving and supportive. And it was the beginning of my healing journey. And it was the beginning of me realizing what I'm about to teach you tonight, which is that peace is possible despite what's going on in your life or in the world around you. And it took me a long time to get to that. That was not an overnight realization. But it is a truth, it is a sacred truth that peace is a choice, it's a decision. And it is not, once we learn how to connect in, it's no longer an option. It is something that we can tap into like a resource whenever we need it. So, my intention and my hope for you during this talk is that you start to feel a little bit of that sense of peace and connection that I'm talking about, that you start to step out of what in yoga philosophy and in Buddhism is called the trance, this idea that our happiness, our freedom, our peace is hitched to external circumstances, that there's just a little crack of light that comes in. And I can tell you that's how the journey started for me when I would go to these yoga classes and I would just lay there and breathe and be in that loving environment. When I came out, there was a little bit of light shining through, just a little tiny, like your window is just opened a tiny crack and you get that teeny bit of breeze that comes in. And what that did for me was to allow me to know that it's possible, that it's possible. I couldn't access it right away. I didn't have it all figured out, nor do I now, because it's a lifelong journey. But the realization, just the realization that it was possible, gave me something really important, which is hope. And once I had hope, it gave me the inner strength to dive deeper, go further, commit to these practices that have brought me so much internal peace in my life, despite a lot of things that are still, including chronic migraines, still currently going on in my life. And then, of course, what's going on in our world right now. And so my hope for you is that you get that little crack of light that comes through. You get that sense that this is possible for me. Okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight is our call to what I call our call to rebellion, the negativity bias. So my sweet spot, really, what I love is the intersection of science and ancient wisdom. Growing up, I was a science geek. I majored in chemistry in college and then went back to school and became a nurse. But I always had this really spiritual side to me, this side that I really deeply felt, not just believed, but intuitively felt that there was something bigger out there that I was a part of, a loving presence, a guidance. But I never really connected with any religion that I was introduced to. And then when yoga came into my life, that was it. Me and yoga fell in love, and it was the connection, the way of connecting to this higher power that I had been feeling all of those years. So that's my way of connecting. I am a pluralist, meaning that I don't believe that is the only way, right? So for some people, it could be Christianity or Quakerism or Buddhism or Judaism. I really do believe that all paths lead to the same mountaintop. And so I do speak primarily from a yogic and a little bit of a Buddhism lens. But these teachings are in all the ancient wisdom traditions. And now science is starting to really validate what these traditions have been teaching us for millennia. And so I love that. And so I usually kind of interweave the two things, the ancient wisdom and the science. So that second piece there, the negativity bias, that is comes from positive psychology, and we'll talk about what that is. So that's based in science. And then discovering your well-being. So then we're going to talk about how do we discover this well-being that exists within us. In yogic philosophy, it is believed that we are whole and complete exactly as we are, and that our job here in this lifetime is to remember that. It's to remove the obstacles to the knowing that we are whole and complete and perfect just as we are. And so we're gonna talk about this discovering this well-being will be some ways that we can understand that. We can come to understand that. And practices. So some of it will be investigation, what I call investigation. So I'll be asking you to kind of go internal, think about some things, and investigate what comes up for you when I prompt you. And then some of the things will be actual practices that we'll work on together. All right, our call to rebellion. So I'm a yoga teacher as well. And at the end of each of my each of my classes, I thank the students for their radical act of rebellion. That's the phrase that I use, their radical act of rebellion, because I believe that we live in a really fear-dominated society, and the choice to move towards positivity, to move towards love, compassion, connection, wholeness is a radical act of rebellion in our society. And it is very common, and we're going to talk about that negativity bias, so it's going to bring it back to this, but it is very common for people to get caught in a loop of fear and negativity. So we are worried about something, we ruminate on it, we spend a lot of time thinking about it, chewing on it, looking at it from different angles, feeling overwhelmed, feeling afraid. And ultimately, we never really come up with an answer, right? Somewhere in the back of our minds, we're thinking, if I think about this enough, if I spend enough time dissecting this and trying different things, then I will solve this problem and then I will feel better. But what we realize is that that never happens, right? After a while, we're like, actually, I've been turning this thing over in my head continuously, sometimes for years, and I haven't made any steps forward. And when we get caught in that loop and we start to realize, okay, I've been doing this for a while and yet I haven't seemed to move forward at all, that's when the real fear and overwhelm set in, because we think, this is it, I'm stuck, I will be here forever. And that is not true. So the other thing also, especially I will say about, I live in the United States. And right now, politically, there is a lot that's going on that's very overwhelming. And if you come from a more privileged background, there can be this sense of, if others are suffering, then it's not right for me to be happy. How can I enjoy life when others are suffering so much? And so we almost hold back, and we resist the invitation, the call to joy and to peace, because we feel like it's unfair, right? It's not fair that I should be experiencing a sense of happiness, joy, freedom, when other people are not. But really, this is the trance. It's the trance that blocks us from the larger truth, the truth of that we are whole and complete and perfectly okay, exactly as we are, no matter what's happening around us. And I like to flip the script. So, think about the top two questions there. Does constantly worrying about or fixating on a problem actually fix the problem? I think we probably could answer that question as no, right? Does denying yourself joy and peace make your life or the world better, right? Does saying others are suffering, so I can't be joyful, does that improve your life or the life of those that are suffering? No. And the answer is no. But we get caught in this almost like this idea that we're responsible for other people's suffering. And when we get caught there, when we get caught in that loop I'm talking about of that fear and overwhelm and separateness, we can't show up as our best selves. And it is the ability to show up with presence, gratitude, connection, peace that allows us to come up with creative solutions to really difficult problems. So what happens in our brains when we are in fight or flight, here's a little bit of science for you. So I don't know if you're familiar with what fight and flight is, but that's when your nervous system is really activated and it's sensing danger. And then there's the opposite of that, which is rest and digest. And that's when you're feeling really calm and peaceful and happy and connected. So our vision for problem solving is like this. Calm, connected, peaceful, we can see panoramic view, right? Panoramic view of ourselves, of the world, of the ability to fix things or how we could possibly go about making a difference. When we're in that fight or flight, we get this teeny tiny, it's like the lens of a camera coming in, or if you've ever seen a movie where someone's about to pass out, and you see the black kind of coming in from the sides. That's fight or flight. And we get this tiny, narrow little view of the problem, of ourselves, of others, and we can't solve from that space. Because most of our brain is actually offline when we're in that space. Most of the frontal cortex, which we're going to talk about in a minute, but that part of the brain that is responsible for higher order thinking goes offline. So it is, in my opinion, like a moral obligation to make sure that you are returning to peace and well-being over and over and over again, because you will make your life better. You will make the lives of the people that you directly impact, right? Those people you touch around you better. And those ripple effects will go out into the world and they will positively impact the world. Okay, so, let me fix my little slide here. I'm gonna have to work on this. A radical out act. Okay, rebel against the domination of fear and choose to tap into the magic, wonder, and beauty in life by waking up from the trance of worry, lack, and not enoughness. So that is what I am asking you to do today. And it will be something that you will have to practice over and over and over again, as I have to practice it over and over again. But it is worth the practice. And just like anything else that we practice at, we get better at it over time. We will never be perfect, but we will make strides in the right directions, and that will impact everything. That quote on the bottom is from Zen Buddhism, open to the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. And what that means is that in order to be whole, we need to be in contact with all the joys of life and all the sorrows of life. So for most of us, and it's pretty natural inclination, we want to run towards the joyful parts of life and hide away from the sorrows of life, because the sorrows are painful and we don't like it. It doesn't feel good. But to really be whole, we have to be able to hold it all, hold all the joys and hold all the sorrows. And that allows us to live a full and awakened life. When we resist those sorrows, we throw the balance of life out of whack, right? By not being, not allowing what this life is trying to teach us and trying to bring forth. But when we can hold the joys and hold the sorrows and not cling towards one or the other, that's when we become, well, we are always whole. That's when we sense our wholeness. Okay, so the negativity bias, I mentioned this in the beginning. This is the reason why we get caught in that loop of what I mentioned earlier, that loop of, I'm trying to fix your screen here a little bit, sorry. Fixating on a problem, right? Where we have a problem in our minds and we just start thinking about it continuously and worrying about it. And what if this happens? What if that happens? The what ifs could really send us over the edge. And the reason why we do that is because we have something called a negativity bias. And that is basically our brain's mechanism for making sure that we stay safe, healthy, and alive. It's called the lizard brain because it is the oldest part of our brain. And really, in the process of evolution, way early back when we were evolving, it was make sure you don't get killed, right? Make sure you have enough to eat, make sure another animal does not kill you or attack you, make sure you have shelter. It was all about just survival. And then since then, the brain has undergone massive growth and transformation, and we now have this thing called a frontal cortex. And in the frontal cortex, that's where we feel this interconnectedness. And I show on this, I say 4 types. So there's 4 types of connection that that are required for us to have that sense of peace and well-being. And that's connection to ourselves, right? To our heart, to our souls, connection to others or the world, connection to nature, and then connection to something greater than ourselves. So that something greater could be God of any name, right? Any way of naming a higher power. It could be connection to a cause. It could be just the thing that all of your life is in service to. But it is greater than just us. It is more than just the I. Our frontal cortex also allows us to have the sense of caring and empathy towards other people. It's how we sense that internal knowing, right? That sense that I just know that I am okay. I know that this higher power is speaking to me. I have this internal knowing that I can't quite explain, but I also absolutely cannot deny. And all of that leads to belonging, a sense of belonging. And that belonging is to those 4 things, right? To ourselves, to others, to nature, and to something bigger than ourselves. And belonging leads to well-being. So this lizard brain, I think I forget the name of the scientist who popularized this, but basically he said, if you think about your brain stem, you have right here is like the brain stem that winds up going down kind of into the body. This is your lizard brain, the thumb, and this is your frontal cortex on top. And what we want to do is have good communication between our lizard brain and our frontal cortex. Because the lizard brain is going to do what it's going to do, right? It's a primitive part of the brain. It is going to be scanning the environment for danger at all times, and trying to keep you safe. That's its job, and that is what it will do. The frontal cortex has all these higher functions that it performs, but it can sometimes often be overridden by this lizard brain. And what we want to do is be able to become the witness of the lizard brain. So when the lizard brain sends the fire alarm signal, 5-alarm fire, danger, 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 We want to have a strong connection to our frontal cortex that we can step back and look at that and say, is that really dangerous? Right? Am I really, because historically, danger, danger, danger meant your life was in danger. Now it could mean that your sense of connection is in danger, your ego is in danger, right? Your emotional state is in danger, right? You're in danger of feeling angry or sad or some emotion that you don't want to feel. So it's a very different function now than it was when we first developed that part of our brain. And so we want this strong connection with the frontal cortex so we can look at it and say, I know you're sending off these signals, lizard brain, but I don't have to listen to them. I can see them as just habituated signals that you're sending because you think I'm in danger, but I have enough space to recognize that I'm actually not. So, what does it feel like to think that something good will happen in your life? So just take a moment um, and think about that. Think about, envisioning maybe something that you desire and envisioning it coming into your life. So when you do that, certain emotions may pop up. Maybe it's excitement, anticipation, happiness, but it can also be the reverse. It can also be fear. It could be a sense of, no way, that's not going to happen. I don't believe it. It can be a sense of disappointment because you don't trust that it will last, right? Maybe it will come into my life, but it will never last. We get habituated to the tensing, the bracing against life. And we need to learn to let that go, right? To take the walls down, to open the heart, to be able to receive the 10,000 joys and the 10,000 sorrows. Okay. Oh, I will go back and mention, sorry, we talked about all of these except for samskaras. So in yoga, there's something called samskaras, and it is this idea that we have kind of like tracks that get laid down in our brain. They are in the science world, you would call it a neuropathway. So it's this habitual loop of thought or behavior or response. And the beautiful thing is we have something called neuroplasticity, right? So if we've created a lot of samskaras or a lot of neuropathways that aren't serving us, we can choose differently. And eventually, what will happen is those old pathways will weaken and the new pathways will get stronger with the practice. And part of that practice is that meditation I have on the bottom. So when I said, connecting, getting that connection stronger between the lizard brain and the frontal cortex, meditation is a beautiful way of doing that. So well-being is not a formal definition. This is for the purposes of this talk. It's a pervading sense of being at home in yourself, at home in the world, at home with others, at home with your higher power, at home in nature, or belonging to those things, to belonging to yourself, belonging to others, to our hearts, our bodies, our earth, and to something bigger. So that's that sense of connection that I was talking about before. Well-being is this pervading sense of belonging to those four connections. And when we have that well-being, when we deeply know it in our bones, we intuitively know that whatever happens, we are okay. We are okay. And we can choose to creatively respond without losing that sense of belonging. So maybe something challenging comes into our lives and we do need to respond. Life is a play between being and doing, right? We can't be in the all being and we can't be in the all doing. but the doing should come from the being. The doing should be sourced and energized from the being. And so when we get to this place of well-being, when we intuitively know that whatever happens, we are okay because we are connected to these four aspects of life, then we can respond in those ways I was talking about, with creative solutions, with compassion, with empathy, with a peaceful, loving heart. That is the pathway. That is the pathway to internal peace. Thank you for joining me on this journey of self-discovery here at the Midlife Purpose Project. I hope today's conversation sparked something deep inside of you, made you laugh, or reminded you that you are never alone. Remember, it's never too late to reconnect with your soul's purpose and live a life of meaning. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show, or share it with someone who could use a little inspiration. It really helps the show reach more women and helps me keep the content ad-free. Join me next time as we continue to explore what it means to live with purpose in midlife.